Etsy. I want to be able to go on Etsy and order like blood spattered unitards. that's apparently that's the omni.
There's a shocking amount of that kind of
stuff. There's a lot
of
that. Yeah.
Like every year when Christine's looking for stuff for like the office Halloween thing, she's like, wow, there's a lot of different ways you can buy blood splatter.
That's true. Yeah.
Just make your
There's
own.
Those t-shirts that just have the bite mark and say I'm fine. That's my favorite one. Hey everybody, welcome to another We Just Watched, and I'm back with Jay. Hey. And it has been maybe the most delightful summer for mid-budget horror movies.
Yeah.
That I can remember in a long time.
We might be going a bit outside mid-budget at this point.
For this one, I don't think so. Yeah? It's not $1 billion.
No, it's not crazy.
It's like a $150 million movie.
It's not a Marvel movie.
Yeah. I mean, they waste a lot of money on movies.
They sure
It's not $40 million. It's not a Maxine or you know what I mean. But it's a studio movie. But we're here to talk about Alien Romulus as part of Grimdark Media.
The 5th Alien movie or the 3rd prequel movie.
I mean, it's technically between. It's a tweenzers. It's a 1.5, right? It's in between Alien and Aliens, so it's technically.
Now it feels like we're actually talking about gaming because we're going to like split hairs about editions.
I know, yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Look what they've
Let's
done
have edition wars.
Look what they've done.
Let's throw stuff across the table to each other.
We'll save the edition wars for when we do the review of the Player's Handbook.
There you go.
I'm pretty excited about this because, again, I was so thrilled with most of the movies that came out this year. And I was relatively surprised Alien Romulus was going to get made.
Yeah.
Because Ridley Scott got back in the driver's seat for 2 movies. And they were pretty high profile.
Yep.
And this is a director who has done like a bunch of like great French horror, but I don't think has done an English market movie this big. I'm aware of, no. Not this big. And this is a big deal. So we're gonna get in. We're not gonna use the whole GDM format because this is just a We Just Watched, but we'll probably end up talking about opening thoughts, story, and then closing thoughts. And like story is gonna be like pacing, writing, all that stuff. And we can talk about technical stuff in the opening and closing too. So you saw this at a drive-in.
Correct.
I saw this in Laser X. So we had very different visual experiences. I had the wraparound theater where you're like immersed.
Are you implying that the front windshield of my car is not a high resolution screen?
I'm not saying it isn't, but from the technical standpoint, I wanted to shout out the fact that there is a slight difference seeing it in Laser X versus seeing it at the drive-in in the 3rd of 3 movies.
Yes.
You'd also watched Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine. So you're like 6 hours into this screening at this point when this movie kicks off.
I had to go hard before I went home.
That's right. Yeah. So there's like a technical thing there where like I was really impressed by the technicality of it, but I'm also like feeling like I'm flying through space in certain moments and like surrounded by acid. So I would recommend if you get to still see this in theaters, go see it in Laser X if you can. It had a great Laser X showing.
Although broadly in general, if you get a chance to go see a movie at a drive-in, go see movies at a drive-in because it's amazing.
It is amazing, and the snacks are great. You can walk around outside.
Yeah, if you're looking for like a high quality motion picture experience, it's not that. If you're looking for a high quality movie going experience, it's amazing.
And it's really interesting. You watched it right after Deadpool and Wolverine because those 2 movies have way more in common than people might think because they are built on Memberberries.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I just throw something out completely from left field? So obviously I always think we live here, we're nearby, we know like where everything is around us for frame of reference. Just weird, pointless, all complete trivia thing. So the drive-in near where I live in Oakville.
Yeah.
The drive-in in Oakville is the one that they filmed all the scenes at the drive-in for the Umbrella Academy at.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Bit of trivia. That's
so even if you don't know where I live, if you've watched Umbrella Academy, you've seen the drive-in that I saw this movie.
That's incredible. Okay, so anyway, you can go see Jay's drive-in. That's awesome. Last time I went to a drive-in was the one in Far Harbor in Fallout 4. That's the last drive-in experience I've had. So
there were less ghouls at my drive-in.
A lot less ghouls at your drive-in. A lot less radiation. So my initial thoughts about this were that while Deadpool and Wolverine was a like winking, acknowledging this is just a pastiche of Memberberries shit that everyone's gonna watch, this was that, but didn't advertise itself as being that.
And Deadpool and Wolverine, like the winking was like that, like really over the top, lean into the camera.
Hey, everybody, remember this? Yeah, like whispering to the audience, like this is the joke. Yes, this is the joke, everybody. And so this is set in between the first and second.
Why didn't
movies.
they call this movie Aliens Homage? I could have called it Aliens homage. That would have been good.
I thought if they did it like early 2000s, it could be Aliens with a Z.
They would have to have David Lynch direct it.
Aliens, like Existence. You can make a gun out of chicken bones. So the big sort of like plot points in this one are two things that I really liked. So first of all, I really like this movie. And before we get too much into plot, I really like this movie. I thought it was a adequate alien film.
I would agree that it was very adequate. So the conversation that Ash and I had offline and that I got kind of dumped on by some people online about earlier, I didn't hate this movie.
Yeah.
This movie at some point petered off for me.
Right. Yeah.
My tank was full.
You had a capacity for Memberberries that you
I had enough.
Now, and to be fair, you'd also eaten a lot of Memberberries in the movie previous
Fair enough.
too, so you came to it from that place.
So it's very homage-y. For better or for worse. I thought for better until there was just too much of it.
There's just too much of it for you, yeah. I thought it had a really big ask it was ambitious in that it wanted to both ratify the prequels with the current thing and also fit in between the two most beloved of the Alien franchise movies, which is Alien and Aliens.
Of all the movies in the Aliens franchises, movies, all the different series, the Versus Predator, all that stuff, it feels the most like it's made of connective tissue.
Yeah, exactly. And it's tying to other properties.
Yeah.
And then I also thought it did a good job of standaloning the story beats, because this is a slasher movie like the first one. It has elements of being a war movie like the second one, but it changes genres. So instead of being a adult slasher movie like Halloween, it's a teen slasher movie like Sleepaway Camp or
But man,
Friday
at the
the 13th.
start, it feels like Blade Runner.
And at the start, it feels a little bit like Blade Runner. That's right, because we have three things I think that this movie does really well. One, it expands the world building of what it's
Really
like to live under Weyland-Yutani and live in these like colony planets and stuff like that. Two, which I think actually really did a good job of setting the stakes of why these sexy teens are going to do things.
Right? Like in all the other movies, all the characters, they are something, right? They're the space truckers, they're the space marines, they're the prisoners, they're the whatever.
Yep.
And at the start of this movie, all the characters, I mean, they're miners, but they're not mining. Like, they're citizens.
Yep.
They're just citizens living on a Weyland-Yutani planet.
And they're trying to get away from Weyland-Yutani.
Yes.
And that's what you learn is that, like, they are trapped here. The girl is supposed to be able to leave because her contract's up, and they just extend her contract. And they're like, no, we've just extended how many more months you have to be under your contract. And she's like, but and it's just, nope, bye, see you next time. We get a bunch of what life's like for the artificial people. Artificial persons. In that we have a slightly decommissioned one that has been like put back together and is malfunctioning for her to have as a brother because her father died and she built this. He basically restored this synthetic to
and the general populace are sick of this shit.
And they hate them.
Yeah.
Because they took all their jobs and made life harder for them. And that's why these guys...
They
took our jobs! And that's why these guys are all living on a fucking terrible mining planet, basically, dying. And it's funny because they do like a Zoolander, like, I got the black lung. There's literally a guy carrying a canary down into a coal mine.
That is the rationale for why they're extending her contract, right? Because when they are extending her contract, it's because they've had so many deaths among the miners, they don't have enough miners anymore.
That's right. So you guys have to stay because we just have too many people dying from the black lung. And there's an actual canary being taken down in the mines, which is crazy.
It's a space canary.
A space canary, obviously, yes. And then we discover that when one of the young space truckers, he's basically a space garbage man, driving a space garbage truck, is up in orbit. They discover there's some type of object up there that could be salvaged. And that if they can find a cryopod, then they can take the space garbage truck and fly all the way out of Weyland-Yutani's jurisdiction to like some free colony world. And I think that's great because the world building there is we realize for the first time, there's no government. There's no unifying body of humanity left. There's the corporate influence of like Weyland-Yutani. And like, that means that those Marines that we saw in the second movie, they're not a government Marine Corps. They're
Blackwater.
They're Blackwater. They're owned by Weyland-Yutani.
It's interesting because again, and it doesn't stick with the Blade Runner thing very long. Like I'm making it sound like there's a lot of Blade Runner, but it has that very cyberpunky feel where you don't have nations, you have corporations. Oh, but also you only have one corporation.
Yeah.
Like it's It's not the peaceful coexistence of every corporation as Taco Bell. It's a little bit worse.
That's right. Yeah. Although they do talk, there was a mention of who made the synthetics or who made something. They mentioned a couple.
And later on, they specifically touch on their competitors. So there's a little bit of seed planting. Again, the world building is great.
Mm-hmm. Then we get to space. We discover there's a derelict space station. That derelict space station is slowly in a decaying orbit and about to like die. And they board it because they're looking for pods to try and get out of Weyland-Yutani space into like a free colony.
Yeah.
And this wish fulfillment thing is something that all of them want. We discover there's a brother and sister. Brother's the space garbage man. Younger sister is hiding the fact that she's pregnant. His best friend is a complete dirtbag, just a complete like rat fuck dirtbag, gross human being. But is also secretly the dad of the baby. And then we've got his girlfriend, who's like the badass we think might become Ripley chick, who's the pilot. She like flies the plane. And we have our protagonist character and her brother. And these characters are effectively like our Goonie squad trying to escape.
Sorry, and by her brother, you mean the robot.
Her brother, who's the robot, so the synthetic. They arrive in the station, discover that the pods are there. They eject it. It's funny because it looks just like the ejection system on the, not the Nostromo, the one that's the McLean Marine ship.
Oh my God! Why can
neither of us remember this? The USC.
Oh my God!
I know, right?
Have I not watched this movie enough times?
I want to say Pillar of Autumn, but I know it's not Pillar of Autumn. The Sulaco.
Thank you. I'm doing the dialogue in my head. I'm like, we can bring the dropship down from the Sulaco.
So it looks like it because it's like...
As we get older and our memory gets worse, should we like do this more like a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire thing where we have like the option to phone a friend or like filter it down?
There was people yelling Sulaco.
Oh, I know. I know. Angrily.
Angrily. And it's cool because they use a similar design element where it's this like almost like section of wall that pops out. And so it pops up, you can get into the pods, and it pops out afterwards. And they eject it, but they realize there's not enough cryofluid to actually get them there. They have like a couple months, not a couple years, I think 9 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So then they have to go on, that launches our whole plot line of they have to go try and find this cryofluid. And they have a magic scanner, little scan box, which is a lot like the sniffer box from Alien.
Yeah.
It's Dallas's little like sniffer box.
I should also point out that during this setup bit, they do, it's almost like a reverse callback, right? Because in all your Aliens movies, either the android, the artificial person, is either secretly out just for the company and they're going to screw people over, or you do the Bishop bit where you kind of swap that. This is the opposite, because when they get on board, what none of them have told the robot, the artificial person, is that they're going to go to sleep for 9 years and he's got to just hang. He's just, it's just like, no.
Also, he can't go to the colony because they don't allow them.
We're just abandoning.
Yeah, we're abandoning you because you're going to, if we go to this free colony, they don't allow synthetics there because synthetics are like used as infiltrating agents by Weyland-Yutani.
Which makes the synthetic arguably in the first 20, 30 minutes of the movie by far the most sympathetic character.
And he's broken.
Yeah,
he's obviously broken. He tells bad jokes because he's programmed to by her dad.
Programmed to tell dad jokes.
He's programmed to tell dad jokes. And she's caring for him. Yeah. He'll occasionally like skits out and fall down, and they have to reboot him by like pulling a chip from his ear.
The premise is supposed to be that he's looking out for her, but she's clearly looking out for him.
She's clearly having, and he gets beaten at one point by a group of children while she's in line waiting to go and try and find a way off the planet. So as they arrive here, they start looking for this fluid. They end up in a command station nearby where the fluid is as they traverse the station. The pilot basically ejects the space dump truck and goes and picks up the escape pods. Now they're circling the station. They have roughly 96 or 36 hours, I think, before the decays enough.
Which they didn't realize when they got on board, because when they got on board, they didn't realize the object was as big as it was, because it's a station, not a ship.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, as they're exploring it, looking for the cryo juice, ice, I guess.
Fluid, yeah.
Like
dried
antifreeze,
ice.
Whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
It's liquid nitrogen.
Meth.
Yeah, meth.
But one of the things that keeps getting kind of quietly said and then kind of thrown away and ignored is the whole, why did they abandon this? Because like everything about it is intact.
And also looks like they're dropping, like everything got dropped immediately and like left behind in a hurry. It looks very much like Hadley's Hope. We have callbacks to Hadley's Hope immediately right at the beginning of the movie. Even they're having lunch, the synthetic and the main protagonist, and the Tippy Bird is Tippy Birding from at the beginning, like just sitting there on the desk, Tippy Birding. There's all kinds of visual callbacks like this. As they enter into the station deeper, they discover where the fluid is. It's in this like kind of locked room. And they also find a destroyed android and a weird melted hole in the station and a weird thing hanging up from a bunch of tubing whose acid blood has clearly melted down to the hole. We see our first alien.
Yeah.
It's been blown to pieces. It's melted this android.
This is where somebody bagged one of Ripley's bad guys.
This is where someone bagged one of Ripley's bad guys. And we have a real like back to Aliens moment where we first see the impact of this like acid blood. They discover the cryo fluid is in this room. The room is full of weird things. They don't really pay much attention to it though until they start pulling out the cryo fluid.
None of these characters have seen Event Horizon. Like, you don't just walk into the weird room and ignore all the things that you see.
The weird room with knee-deep water. The doors immediately close and lock behind them as the temperature starts to rise in the room because they're pulling all the cryo fluid out of it. And we realize that the entire room is just full of facehuggers. The facehuggers are everywhere. One of them gets, and also there was a good visual gag where the girl finds the body scanner. The pilot she boards the ship and finds the body scanner, and then like the body scanner, she scans herself and can like see through her arm. And this is a cool callback for later. But they basically accidentally unthaw the facehuggers and get attacked by them. And it's like not a couple. And I really liked this part because they show this is a good callback to the command center, the medical scene in Aliens, where the two facehuggers get loose because Burke like lets them loose in the bedroom with Ripley and Newt, and they have to fight like these weird creepy hand monsters. They did a great job. There's some real body horror to when they get grabbed by the head and like the thing is trying to shove down their throat. And, like,
well, and the thing is, as much as it's a cool callback, like you got to remember in the Aliens movie. Like, yeah, it's only Ripley and Newt in the room at first, but they are surrounded by armored guys that are going to try and bust in and save them. This is a bunch of idiot teenagers who broke into a haunted house.
Yeah, one of them finds a cattle prod. That's about as armed and equipped as they are.
Yeah.
Some fun and games happens. They decide to they have to get chased out by these things. They manage to relatively escape back to the command center and lock them in that room. But one of them gets a facehugger on them and is maybe implanted, maybe not implanted. And to figure out what the hell is going on, they decide to try and fix this synthetic that they find. Also, to get into that room in the beginning, because it's locked, they pull the command chip out of that dead synthetic and stick it into the brother and their synthetic, which alters his personality relatively significantly.
Immediately.
He becomes way more competent than you think he would. And I really liked that. I'll say of the group, his acting is by far the best.
100%.
He really
the guy who plays the synthetic, because it's he does the transition.
Yeah, we should figure out these names. I'm gonna Google.
Well, I already told you that the characters don't have names or personalities. But anyway,
your opinion,
in my opinion, but the guy who plays the synthetic, who might have an actual name,
his name is David Johnson. He plays Andy. Andy was a synthetic. Rain's the main character. Kay was the pregnant girl. Navarro's the pilot, and Tyler is the elder boyfriend.
But if you
Scumbag's Bjorn.
But if you picture the synthetic, the transition, it's the whole Flowers for Algernon thing, right? Like he goes from being this like kind of mildly disabled guy to clearly some sort of, I'm going to say, hyper intelligent, hyper competent character. And it's sudden and it's instantaneous, but it's not cartoony, which I think is why the acting comes across as so good.
Yeah, David Johnson's acting is incredible in this. So Rain and Andy are now questioning the synthetic that they're bringing back together. And this is one of your least favorite parts. And we should talk about this right now because they bring Ian Holm back for Ash, but Ian Holm's been dead for 3 years.
Yeah.
So they deep fake an Ian Holm a lot like they did with Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars.
Correct. So this is one of those things that I understand everybody's totally divided on this. Yeah. So either, because I'll be honest, like in the first moment I got focused on his face and I'm like, it's Ian Holm. I'm like, oh, that's Ian Holm. Oh,
that's Ian Holm. Yeah.
And so for like, I get that for a lot of Aliens fans, like, you're going to be super excited to see him again. It feels very familiar. It is a fantastic callback. Without knowing the details, and I'm not trying to cast anybody as the villain, I'm really not comfortable with using AI and deepfake technology to, like, I would like to think that when I die, I get to stop working And the fact that an actor passes away and 3 or 4 years later, and there are exceptions. We just talked about this with James Earl Jones,
yep.
where he's very publicly given his
blessing to yep.
use his voice after the fact to continue being the voice of Darth
Vader.
Vader.
He just passed away actually yesterday.
He did, as we record this.
Yep.
But seeing an actor kind of brought back in that way, it's, for me personally, it's uncomfortable and it's disrespectful.
Sure.
And again, I get that not everyone is going to feel that way. It's not an objective opinion. It's a subjective opinion. But yeah, I just didn't like it.
I think the reason I'm not like, one, from a technical point of view, the first shot wasn't great. It had a real uncanny valley thing going through it. Mm-hmm. And they zhuzhed up his image by running him through CRT screens for most of the movie. Anytime he's talking, they have him viewing through an old television screen, basically. So it's grainy and like it doesn't look as fake.
Yep.
The real reason I didn't think it needed to be that way was you had this is supposed to be the top of the line. This is how many years after Alien? 10, 20 or something like that. It's not long.
No,
it's not the 52 years that is the in between afterwards. 57 years, sorry. 57 years. But you also have Lance Henriksen still alive that you could have used for this same role.
Yeah, and you also have
Fassbender,
Michael Fassbender.
So like I can see not using Fassbender from a story point of view because he's the insane rogue AI, right? Fassbender's the prototype. He's also like the original. So like maybe they never made another copy of Fassbender. If you're going to use Ian Holm, he's probably outdated at this point model-wise, and the brand new top-end model that you have in your super science research station trying to figure out how to make the perfect organism would probably be the new model, which would be Bishop, right? So like, and also they name him Rook.
Which, like I said, I just think is the laziest.
It's kind of lazy writing, and it also doesn't connect to Ash's character in the first Alien movie. So like...
So I just want to make sure I understand. So on the record, what you're saying is you're okay with someone named Ash being dug up from their grave and forced to continue working after they die.
Yes, okay.
Right into the camera, into the camera.
Yeah. Yes. You can keep using my likeness for stupid movie reviews. And I do think that that to me is the part where this was a choice. So they made the choice. I think how they followed through with the choice was good. But if I was writing this, I think I would have written other options that would have been A, stronger story-wise, and B, not disrespectful for someone who's not.
And I can tell you, like in my experience watching this, right? I'm watching this. My daughter is sitting right next to me watching it. My daughter had zero issue with it, right?
No idea.
Yeah, no issue. She'd seen the original movie, but like it lacked context. She had no idea. Like she remembered him from the original movie, and that was it. That was the whole thing. And I think if that's how it lands for you, that's great because you'll enjoy it. But yeah, like I said, for me, there's just something icky about it.
And for us as viewers, what it immediately elicits is this guy's villainous. He's going to betray them. He has his own objectives.
Yeah, there's not a big surprise coming.
There's no big surprise coming that he's going to manipulate them into getting what he wants. But this is where I think we get our best time, where we realize as the kind of fun and games happen, there's no real cure. There's maybe a cure, maybe not a cure. There's a medical center they can get to. They can try and get off the station. They need to destroy the station. He's manipulating them into trying and going and recovering a sample down in the basement lab, basically.
Now, the one thing, because again, we're not surprised that Ash Rook is going to betray them, screw them over, however you want to present it. The thing to remember, though, is they've pulled a chip from him and inserted it into Andy, right?
Andy, that's right.
And Andy's personality hasn't, like, his competency level has changed. His personality has not radically changed yet.
Yeah, that's right. And he's and now Andy and Rook are having like offside conversations, you realize, because they're the stakes now are understood by Andy, and what they need to do to get off the station is understood by Andy. They try and get back to the ship. We have a moment where, unfortunately, we realize that Navarro is absolutely infected. She uses her little scanner in a very cool body horror scene where she basically can see through her own chest and see the alien moving inside. She's locked in the ship with Kay, who's the pregnant sister of Tyler. And the chest burster scene is actually pretty good in this one. They can't get to her because the door's locked. Andy refuses to open it because there's going to be an alien in there and they could rescue her, but doesn't then she gets kidnapped.
And this is kind of the first step you see in that transition, because it's not that he's screwing them. He's very cold, and it's very the first robot scene in iRobot, where he's calculating the statistical.
He needs the manying them.
You got it.
He needs the manying them that way. He needs the few. And so Navarro, freaking out, wants to get off the station, tries to steal the ship with Rain, has the chestburster come out. The ship kind of crash lands in the bay. And Kay is trapped with this emerging alien that's very rapidly getting bigger. She's knocked out, and in like minutes we see this like because they try to escape with scumbag Bjorn as well, and Bjorn and Kay are now trapped in this crashed shuttle sort of like docking station with the alien as it's growing, and they wake up from being knocked out. And he's still got his cattle prod. And it's funny because we talked about this offline, how one of the great things with the Alien movies is we always learn a little bit more about their physiology and like their makeup at some point. We get to see the cocoon that this thing's in after it comes out of Navarro. And it's a very Geiger like space vagina. Like it's such a weirdly like off-putting thing.
It's back to Advanced Space Crusade days. It's not hiding what
it's not hiding what it's supposed to be at all. No, not at all. And Bjorn decides to shove the cattle prod in there, and he thinks he's killing it, but then a bunch of blood starts to leak out, and he gets fucking melted, and it's a lot. He gets it in his face. He gets it in his hand. And this is where I also liked this. They didn't shy away from the body horror stuff.
No.
At all. No. Like they do plenty of like off-putting body horror.
I think when you go through the Aliens movies, and I think, with the exception of arguing whether or not Aliens is you like Aliens more than you like Alien, I think most people would agree that after Aliens, there's a bit of a drop-off in quality, like in terms of what you're getting.
Of effects quality, yeah.
And I think, well, just in terms of the general feel of the story, the narrative, and I think a big part of that is the movies started off far more horror. Yeah. And they became far more sci-fi action as you went down the line.
I would argue that the Fincher one has it if you watch the director's cut, but it got studio noted into oblivion.
It does, but what I'm calling out here is Romulus went back to its horror roots.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's where if you went there to feel uncomfortable and to feel like you were watching a disturbing horror movie, you get that. Mm-hmm. It's great.
And this is really the end of the first act now, right? So Bjorn dies.
Thank God.
He was a real scumbag. He was the perfectly unlikable character.
He died super badly and yet not badly
enough. Yeah, and then Kay gets disappeared by the fully grown alien now, while Andy and Tyler and Rain are watching. And so we enter Act 2, and we're into our like fun and games part of the movie. And the fun and games part of a horror movie is usually overall quest line, the thing we need to get to survive or get through, which is they have to retrieve this sample from the basement lab for Rook, which is Rook Ash.
It's the eye of the storm. Everything calms down, and everybody's collecting their thoughts, formulating plans, and they're basically delivering what they think the exposition will be for the third act, whether it is or not.
And they have to get there. And so there's a bunch of fun and game stuff where they have to get through first this incredible like facehugger challenge where all of the facehuggers are loose again that they trapped. And they come up with the solve of like, maybe they're blind. If we're quiet, how will they hunt us? And then Rook's like, they hunt by body temperature. Or no, Andy is like, they hunt by body temperature because he's got all the data about these monsters now in his head from the chip. And so they're like, well, if we raise the room temperature to 98.6 degrees, we'll be invisible, right? And they're like, yep. And so they do. And as they do, they basically like make their way through. And I think that's actually the moment where Kay wakes up and is like panicking and like calling them through the...
Because that's the tension, because Andy tells them that they can raise the temperature in the room to that degree, but if they start to panic and raise their own body temperature, then the things will be able to see them.
That's right. Again. Yeah. Or sweat or do anything like that. Yeah. And so like, this is where the funny games kind of kicks off. And I forgot that actually happens just as they're trying to get to Kay before the door scene. But like, we're into like movement now. We've left the command center and we're on this quest for Rook. At the same time as this is happening, they're trying to reconnect with the people Navarro's basically taken and now crashed the ship, and her and Bjorn have died. So from there, that's kind of our first checkpoint in the second act, that door scene where Kay gets kidnapped after she wakes up. And then we find the elevator, and this elevator is so reminiscent of the Aliens elevator. Yeah. Like it's so them descending out of the reactor again,
which is awesome because again, in terms of tying it all together and doing that world building, like if you think about the world we live in now, like you template and prefab a whole ton of stuff.
Yep.
So it makes sense for a lot of this stuff, even if it's not identical, to be incredibly similar.
Yeah, they do a good job of the like STC thing, right?
Yeah.
What I really like is also, this is where we realize the station has two names. There's the Romulus and the Remus. They've been on the Romulus this whole time, and the Remus is the secondary station underneath where the lab is. So they get to the lab relatively without incident, but we do realize that there's like weird hive shit down here, that something's been growing and living, and that maybe Rook hasn't told them everything. And then we have our next tie-in to Prometheus, where you realize that the thing that they're trying to do is reverse engineer the biology of the alien that they found on. They basically found the alien that Ripley ejected into space, and from the wreckage of the.
And I can't remember. Is this where we get the direct exposition from Rook about building better worlds?
Yes, about the fact that everyone's dying of diseases and like
basically
we're not meant to be in space.
You suck, and all of you suck. Basically, we're physically not up to the
colonizing
future.
the universe. That's right. And we're all going to die out, and we won't be able, like, space exploration and travel, we're not capable.
So building better worlds means building better people.
And so they reverse engineered the xenomorph that they found in the wreckage of the Nostromo, and they've re-engineered the black oil. That, like, if the xenomorph is a end state of the black oil from whatever happened in Prometheus and Covenant,
they're going around a circle, right? The black oil wants to be the alien, to be the ultimate predator.
Yeah.
The Weyland-Yutani wants the alien to become the black oil, so the black oil can basically be distilled into effectively a medicine or a vaccine,
and make the engineers
better people.
To make them engineers.
Yes.
They're trying to make themselves engineers, and it's funny because there's a bit of a callback to the difference between the engineers on the engineer planet and the engineers they encounter. So like the Covenant engineers versus the Prometheus engineers, where the Prometheus engineers are clearly engineered for space. They have physiology bits that look alien, right? Where like their alienism, their bodies are super strong. Whereas there's a lot more humanity in the ones that are on the homeworld planet in Covenant. And that's probably them adapting the black oil to change their physiologies and stuff. So going full circle, they're equipped with some guns. Andy gives them some guns each, but says if we use them, we're going to die. Like we can't actually use these smart guns. They show they are smart. So now these teenagers have the capacity of basically being Marines.
Yeah, the one guy who used to be an air cadet basically explains, he gives the Hicks speech to her.
Yeah,
about how to
put it on your shoulder, strap it on, it's going to aim itself, point it in the right direction, it'll shoot on its own. We've only got one mag.
450 rounds in a mag.
One mag
Holy
is
crap.
450 rounds, yeah. That you realize that these pulse rifles these are the good ones. These are the ones that, like, it's a cross between the pulse rifle that the Colonial Marines have and the smart gun. Like, it's literally like an in-between of those two things.
Yeah.
But what's funny is I think identically, it looks exactly like the corporate Marines guns from Alien 3. Remember the corporate Marines that were all in like white suits and stuff like that? It looks like their white guns versus
I think you're right.
the Colonial Marine guns from Aliens.
Yeah,
I think there's a design callback there. And they're basically told don't use them. So Tyler, Rain, and Andy now have to make their way back.
And there's another reason not to use them.
Is that they're at the bottom of the station. They'll decompress everything.
Because that's going to become important when you get to your third act.
Because all of a sudden we're in the third act now, and we have more fun and games where we have to get through a whole lot of aliens.
So the very bottom of the station. So what they're talking about is if they blast an alien, it's just going to open the ship up into a vacuum.
Yeah, the blood will just let things down.
Yeah.
And the solve they come up with is really fun. I think this is our third act fun and games thing I like the most, where they're about to be overwhelmed. They're going to be completely overrun. They're going to be completely like destroyed by the aliens. They're all going to die. There's like an aliens amount of aliens coming at them. A hive is down here that has built itself off the people. Like, this is where all the crew went. This is why there's no one in the station. They're all on the bottom. We don't know if they're making a queen, but like they made enough facehuggers. Apparently it didn't matter. They may be spawning a queen eventually, but like there was so many facehuggers in the station that all of the crew now are basically been implanted. They find Rain, and like ungoo her in like a very reminiscent scene, I believe, to Aliens, don't they? Because they find her and take her back to the ship. Yeah, the pregnant girl.
K, not Rain.
K. Oh, that's right. It's right. Yeah. K.
Remember what I said before about they don't have discernible
personalities? They don't have discernible personalities. They do. They're pregnant girl and main protagonist.
There's the girl. There's the other girl.
There's the other girl.
There was a guy.
There was freak out girl. There was freak out girl who stole the spaceship. There was pregnant girl. And so K is found in the hive basically, and they're returning with her. Tyler wants to get her back up the ship. They realize they're all going to die and be overwhelmed, so they kill the gravity. And Andy and Rain stay, and they send Tyler and Kay up the pipe, basically. Now, this is a great scene because their solve for the blood is if we kill all these aliens with our super smart rifles
in zero
gravity, this blood won't go anywhere. It's just going to swirl out and around and stay floating.
And credit where credit is due, because for me personally, like when this starts happening, this is like if you're old and you saw Terminator 2 when it was new, this is literally the first time you see the liquid metal effect.
Yeah.
Because when they blast the first one and you get the zero gravity kill for the alien, it's like, oh my God, that just looks so awesome.
That looks really cool because there's just spirals of green alien acid blood now in the air. And so they wipe out this assaulting bunch of first wave of aliens. But the problem is they're on the other side of the elevator. They have to now get through this blood.
Yeah.
And Andy and Rain
Which
have to
again lends into, again, separate from the narrative, the effect here is just great.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic.
And it's a good writing plant and payoff because when they first arrive on the station, the gravity is pulsing. Even with no power, the gravity plates or whatever have to like discharge a certain amount of time.
Recycle or they test or something. Yeah.
They have to let out their pent up energy, and it's not mechanical. It's mechanical, not like something that has to have power.
It's on it's going to continue regardless, and it's on a fixed schedule.
It's like there's a valve basically that's going to kick it off. So when they realize it's about to happen, they know they have X number of seconds basically until the gravity kicks back on, and they have to get to the elevator and get out in that amount of time. And it's a great chase scene, right? Because now there's zero gravity, and they're having to get up the pipe with no elevator, but they're using the zero gravity to do that. And then, of course, the gravity kicks back on. And we've got kind of the, like, it was reminiscent to me of the bay doors on the Sulaco fighting the Alien Queen scene where there's, like, a grabbing the foot and, like, all that stuff's happening. And I'm okay with this. Like, it's not overt. It's just different fun and games, same kind of situation. Rain is being dragged back down, and so Andy's still in superhero mode. He's had to reset a couple times because he keeps like breaking down, but still in superhero mode. He comes back. You think he's gonna leave her, but then he comes back, grabs the pulse rifle, and says, "Get away from her, you bitch." He does it with different timing, so I didn't think they were gonna go all the way there for a second because he hangs on it for a second, and then he goes, "You bitch." I was like, okay, come on. Was that the moment too far?
I'm trying to remember if that was the moment. So it's funny because for anybody who's watched, me do 100 videos with you, obviously I love my movie one-liners, but when I talk about the tank being over full, it was the endless cut and paste dialogue. And it wasn't like somebody recited a monologue from a character from a previous movie, but the amount of one-liners that got recycled. And this was one of those moments where I'm like, I get why this is supposed to be satisfying, and it probably would have been for me 20, 30 minutes earlier.
So it happens. And this is like our end state now, our end game for the movie's happening. The station is actively starting to slide into like the rings of the planet and disintegrate. Yeah. They're getting back to their garbage truck. And Rook is basically trying to override Andy at this point and get him to like
the dialogue for the most part between Rook and Andy has been like an HR rep with a disobedient employee. Like, honestly, like, I know that sounds stupid, but it's like explaining the company's rules and directives.
He's just passively aggressively threatening Andy the entire time. It's really good. It's really, really good. Again, all of the acting that Andy does is fantastic, especially considering he's acting off an AI voice. Like, he's not even communicating with a real actor here, which is pretty incredible. Yeah. Although they might have had a stand-in for the actual dialogue scenes. But
I would assume so, yeah.
They get back to the ship. And we cut back a couple times to Tyler and Kay, and Kay is not okay. And they've talked about how the black oil could be used as like a cure. And when she's left alone at one point, she just injects herself with the black oil. Yeah. She just fucking puts it in there, and we get a scene where basically Tyler is now outside the ship. I can't remember how he dies. How does Tyler die? Because he dies before everybody gets on the ship. I don't remember either.
I think towards the end I was rolling my eyes so much that I couldn't focus. I don't know.
I think he goes back to try and rescue Andy and Rain and gets killed like very abruptly, if I remember correctly. He dies at some point in the chase out, and it's he doesn't get on the elevator. He dies before that. He dies before the fun and games start with the acid blood, because it's just Andy. Yeah, he gets the tail through the chest. That's when the aliens come out.
That's right.
He gets the tail through the chest exactly like Bishop does.
Right.
In another callback. Before the fun and games start. That's right.
So my eyes would have been rolling. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he never gets back to the ship. They put Kay on the elevator and sent her up first. And because
so not only did the other guy die, the guy died.
Well, Bjorn, and they have names, Bjorn and Tyler.
Yeah, that's what I said. The other guy and the guy.
The guy and the guy. Ship that guy and brother guy. Anyway, Kay gets back to the ship, but she's left alone and she's like freaking out because she feels like she's in contraction. She feels like she's going to die. She's gotten rescued from an alien hive. She injects herself with the black oil.
Yeah.
And no one else knows this has happened. So when Andy and Kay get back to the ship, or not Andy and Rain get back to the ship, and they eject, they don't know that she's inject herself with the black oil, which they've now saved from the lab for Rook. And they just set course for the colony, for adventure. They put Kay in the thing. Yeah, they put Kay in the ship or in the cryopod. They freeze her. They assume that if she's implanted, they'll fix her when they get to the colony, and she'll just be frozen. And we get and as they're leaving, the station's destroyed. They basically are in there like, it's a lot like the Newt and Ripley scene where like Ripley's putting Newt to sleep and will we dream? Like it's kind of
that's funny because even though they put her in the thing, I was actually thinking about it. It was more like when Ripley gets in the escape pod from the Nostromo, and like that's your moment where you're supposed to believe the movie is over, the killer is dead, and all that. Yeah. But
the black oil, of course, kicks in as everyone knew it was going to, and we have a Numi Rapace in the operating theater scene where the poor Kay gives birth to her baby, except her baby is now half black oil and is like a weird engineer alien hybrid.
Yeah.
We have an extended fight scene on the ship. Eventually they blow it into space. And I think Kay dies.
So this is one of those moments where I'm like, I know you don't have to show everything. Like you can imply certain things. But the only moment I realized that she was dead was when they got to the voiceover dialogue at the very end.
Right.
And Rain identifies herself as the sole survivor.
As the sole survivor, yeah. Kay dies either during birth or by being eaten by the engineer hybrid or whatever, the human hybrid. They hard reboot Andy and the power of love overcomes his programming and they pull out the chip. So he goes back to being like kind of subservient Andy. And they defeat this like monster, and then eventually they set sail for whatever the colony is. Yeah. That's the end of our movie.
Well, there's no they anymore.
No, Andy's still
there. I guess Andy's still there.
They decided to take Andy, and they'll figure it out when they get there. And Andy does survive.
But this is the Morgan Freeman voiceover moment. They did not figure it out.
They did not figure it out when they got there, probably, yeah. And that ends our movie with all that sort of like final act funny games. And we're kind of syllabizing it, but like it's a very straightforward fight scene with a monster. She puts a suit on. Like it's basically the escape pod fight.
It's a very straightforward fight scene with a monster that you've probably
already seen because it was an alien. This is a different monster, and the android is the cat. Jonesy is Andy, basically, in this case.
And again, when we were talking about all the different callbacks, her final recording before she jumps in the cryopod is pretty much Ripley's final recording.
Yeah.
When she gets in the escape pod from the Nostromo. It's the same thing.
So what's funny about this movie is the movie I would compare it to the closest is Alien Resurrection.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that is that structurally it follows a lot of the same like gags with like fun and games and stuff like that. The swimming aliens, having to traverse the station to get to like an escape vehicle, losing your like leadership types early on.
So Winona Ryder would have also been an option to be AI.
To be an AI. Oh, it's true. Winona Ryder would have been an option to be an AI. You're right. Although we don't know how much further. Oh, no. It's like 200 years.
Oh, it's way in the future. Yeah.
It's way. I just realized, because
I'm just throwing out more robot names.
Resurrection. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Resurrection's way too.
The next robot name I'm going to throw out is Robert Patrick, and that's not even close.
No, he would have been after they defeated Skynet. So to me, what I liked about this is a more restrained version of Alien Resurrection. And what you thought were like the hollowness of the characters, I actually saw as restraint. Because like if you get Alien Resurrection, you got Joss Whedon writing the characters, and they are like super personality over the top writing tropes. So I enjoyed the restraint of this movie where I got to interpret all of these characters through their actions as opposed to having like too much exposition.
So the thing is, I'm kind of bagging on the hollowness of the characters because I find it funny.
Yeah.
I don't find it annoying. I find it funny.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm bagging on when homage passes homage into unintentional self-parody as negative. Like for me, like, because again, like I can talk about this movie and I can be very excited about what happens through the movie, about like when you remove most of the Most of the characters. like the actual interactions between the characters from the movie. The story is interesting. The setting is interesting. The visuals are fantastic. It's, yeah, for me, it's the repetitive dialogue.
Sure.
And, you know, again, you can do a couple of shot-for-shot remakes of scenes, but when they just keep happening, like, because again,
that's all you do.
I'm not saying it was worse at the end of the movie, but by the end of the movie, I was so tired of it that it came across as worse to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So for me, overall, my closing thoughts are, I think it's very difficult to make an Alien movie that makes anyone happy. Because when they went fully outside the Alien canon and made Prometheus and Covenant, you had people very unhappy that they didn't feel like Alien movies. Yep. But I argue that that's actually what innovates, right?
That's the bold choice.
That's the bold choice, right? And people may or may not like it. And I think people had reasonable criticisms about the writing in that show and like the willingness of certain characters to do certain things and just David touching things in general, which I think you could pass off for being an AI. But I thought Covenant was the better of the two movies and actually had like a lot of strength in cleaning up the first film.
Covenant felt more like it fit within the logical boundaries of that universe and its story. Prometheus felt it had the problem that I think a lot of prequels have, which is that you can see the starting line for the existing franchise down the road and you're rushing too fast to get there.
Yeah.
So you're doing things just because you got to do them to get those set pieces in place.
It was too ambitious, I think, conceptually too. So for me, I think that one of the things that you're reacting to is that this gave fans of the Alien franchise exactly what they said they wanted when they didn't like Prometheus and Covenant. I think this is exactly what they asked for, and the winking feels like it's intentional because it's what they asked
for. And like I said, when I watched this movie, I sat right next to somebody who enjoyed the movie for what it was. Like they enjoyed it at its face value. Like the problem for me is that I've seen all of those preceding movies too many times, right? Like my daughter's seen all those movies, but they're not important to her. They're not iconic to her.
Them. She can't recite them the way you and I can.
Well, or the way the characters in this movie could, apparently. Yeah. But so again, like I understand how people would like the movie. I certainly hope people like the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean,
I want more of these.
I think they got more. They got significantly more right than they got wrong for me as an audience member. It's just the things that they got wrong. It feels like, to go a little meta, it feels to me like that's the kind of thing maybe an editor should have sat back from and been like, should we just space this out more? Should we cut back on this a little bit? Like, all of this is good, but is it too much of this? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, man, I love cake. Like, if you can't tell, I love cake. Yeah. But if I go home and my wife puts a whole cake in front of me and says, that's your dinner, I'm probably going to be like, man, that's too much cake. I can't eat all this cake.
And my last thought
that is a lie, by the way. I would eat all the cake. Yeah, for sure.
My last thought is they also labored under the problem that the best Alien movie of the last 10 years is Alien Isolation. Because Alien Isolation is a better Alien movie than this. And they can't just make Alien Isolation a movie, unfortunately. They should, though, because it's such a better movie. And like, Alien Isolation is what you get when you get 10 years to make a game and have access to all the art assets from the original movie and have people who are obsessed with making a great Alien story. Yeah. And the problem is that Alien Isolation now is the canon connection between Alien and Aliens. Because you have the story of Amanda Ripley, right? So like, that's unfortunately a cross they had to bear when they made this. And I'm still very hopeful for an Alien Isolation movie. There are definitely video games that I think that you could do it. And you get a much more interesting side look at the universe too, through the Working Joes and life on Sevastopol Station and all that stuff. Like where you see these like proto AIs with the Working Joes and all this interesting, like competitive between Weyland-Yutani and that, I can't remember what it's called, the Boros Corporation or something like that ends up getting mothballed and bought out by them. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope they make 10 more of these. I hope they make them in a way which have less memberberries so that you can enjoy them as much as I did.
Or space them out or whatever. Like, space them out, I'll be honest with you. If this sounds stupid, this sounds passive aggressive or backhanded, and I don't mean it to. But if the power had gone out 3/4 of the way through this movie,
You liked it more?
I would have been like, that movie was great. Like, I can't wait to see the rest of it. Like I said, like I just got to the point
And
where
then if you just watch that last quarter by itself, you'd be like, that was great.
I just got to the point where my tank for the things that I was meant to enjoy and was enjoying up till that point was full. And it's like, that's too much.
Yeah. Well, this is a kickoff for us getting back to Grimdark Media. We will be soliciting our recommendations for the probably month of October, going through the rest of this month. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. We got a ton of other movies we could probably talk about. Have you seen, what else did you see this summer?
We could do a Grimdark Media on Inside Out too.
Could we both have daughters.
I'm just trying to think.
Did you see?
It's all a blur now.
Did you see Maxine? Did you see Longlegs?
I haven't seen Longlegs yet. So
great.
It's funny at this point. Probably the best way to figure out what Grimdark stuff I've seen would be to ask my daughter.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. We'll get back and see. But it was a great summer for Grimdark Media. Watchers even was fairly grim and dark, although I didn't love it. But we could talk about that too. And of course, tell us in the comments what you think came out this summer that we should cover, and what other media like books and TV shows and games you think are a good candidate for the fall. So thanks for watching. We'll see you for more GDM in the future. Ton of Ash.
Don't hate me.